I was carefully carving a slice of what felt like cardboard turkey when my cousin Damien let out a sneering laugh. Well, he drawled, looking directly at me. Not everyone here can afford a real career, can they? My uncle, a man whose smile always felt like a prelude to an insult, chimed in with a smirk. Maybe you should just marry someone rich, Anya, just to balance out the family's assets. Before I begin telling you my story, please let me know in the comments from where you are listening. And if you want to tell your story, please write to us. They all chuckled. A chorus of dismissive superiority. Even my own mother averted her gaze as if my presence was an embarrassment. It was the kind of silence that screamed louder than any direct insult. A heavy blanket of judgment settling over the opulent dining room. For what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes, I sat there. My heart hammered against my ribs, my mouth remained shut. Poor people, after all, are often taught not to make a scene, to simply endure. But then, my phone vibrated. I let it ring once, twice, a small rebellion stirring within me. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I placed it on the polished mahogany table and put it on speaker. And when my assistant's calm, professional voice echoed through the suddenly quiet room, saying, "Madam, the investors in Kyoto have approved the final transfer. Your personal accounts have been credited with the full amount." The laughter died. Forks, laden with expensive food, froze midair. In that single, electrifying moment, the pathetic, struggling version of me they had so comfortably dismissed, shattered into 1,000 pieces. But what truly stung wasn't their blatant mockery. It was the sharp, undeniable realization of how long I had allowed myself to believe I needed their approval, their validation. Let me tell you how I arrived at that dinner table, seemingly invisible, only to become undeniably, uncomfortably present. My name is Anya Sharma, and for the greater part of my life, I believed that staying quiet, avoiding conflict would ultimately lead to peace. I was profoundly mistaken. Silence doesn't protect you. It merely makes it easier for people to hurt you, to dismiss you, to forget you. If you have ever felt underestimated, if you've been called a burden, or if you've been made to feel insignificant for daring to dream beyond your perceived station, then this story, in every quiet, defiant beat, is for you. I was deep into coding a new, complex update for the back end of NexusLink, my logistics platform, when my phone vibrated, displaying mother on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment before answering, a familiar sense of unease settling in. My mother rarely called unless she needed something, or someone to fill an awkward void at a family gathering. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was syrupy sweet, a tone I had learned to distrust years ago. "Sweetheart," she purred, "we're having the whole family over for the midsummer celebration. It simply wouldn't be the same without you. Everyone's coming. We just need Anya to make it complete." "Just need her, Anya," she said, as if I were some misplaced piece of cutlery, easily inserted into their grand, curated design. I agreed. My words minimal, "I'll be there." She didn't need to know the complex emotions tangled in that simple promise. 8 years prior, I had stood in this very house before these very people, attempting to explain the collapse of my first tech venture, a casualty of a faulty security patch. I was 28, brimming with naive optimism, believing that the raw truth mattered more than their carefully constructed perceptions. I was wrong. They didn't yell. They didn't ask questions. They simply, quietly, erased me. My name was scrubbed from family trusts. Invitations to family events dwindled, then ceased. Group photos, once abundant, suddenly lacked my presence. I recall my mother telling me, her voice cold and cutting, "We don't tolerate disgrace, Anya, not in this family." I never told them about the drafty attic apartment in Sea Breeze where I used the last of my savings for rent. I never spoke of freelancing until well past midnight, building intricate logistics code for local delivery drivers, surviving on instant noodles for weeks on end. They never asked. What they truly never saw was the slow, arduous, almost invisible construction of NexusLink. What began as a solitary endeavor to streamline route management for independent couriers eventually blossomed into a sprawling, full-scale logistics API. If you've ordered anything, flowers, groceries, even urgent medication, in this region over the past 3 years, chances are it moved through my system. But I meticulously kept my name out of the headlines. I didn't want them to know. Not yet. My desire wasn't for loud, dramatic revenge. No screaming matches or messy lawsuits. I simply wanted to witness their reaction when confronted with the very success they had so casually discarded. I yearned to know if, meeting me again without the knowledge of my achievements, they would treat me any differently. I would soon find out. I packed a small, unassuming weekend bag, then surveyed my apartment. It was still modest, still simple. But every item within its walls was undeniably mine, paid for in full, earned 3 years of quiet, relentless effort, and so, I departed. Not as a prodigal daughter returning to a forgiving embrace, but as a ghost in their collective memory. The Anya they believed had simply vanished, the Anya they were convinced had amounted to nothing. I would re-enter their world precisely as they imagined me, invisible, unimportant, irrelevant. Let's see what they would make of asterisk that asterisk. The Sharma residence remained unchanged, still adorned with gleaming marble floors and glittering chandeliers. Everything was aggressively bright, meticulously polished, as if desperately trying to assert a narrative of permanence and unwavering success. I parked my modest car a block away and walked up the long driveway alone. No chauffeur, no partner in tow, just me in a simple sapphire blouse and flat shoes, clutching a bottle of an expensive Merlot that I knew no one would bother to drink. The grand front door swung open before I even had a chance to knock. It was Leo, my cousin, his perpetual smirk firmly in place. He subjected me to a quick, dismissive scan, from my sensible shoes to my neatly tied hair. Then, with a wider grin, asked, "Still holed up in that attic in Seabreeze?" I offered a polite, almost imperceptible smile, still charming everyone. "With your single status, Leo?" I countered, my voice even inside. The air was thick with expensive cologne and the rich aroma of roasted lamb. Everyone seemed meticulously curated, as if plucked from the pages of a high-end lifestyle magazine. Pearls gleaming, cufflinks glinting, smile stretched taut with Botox by stark contrast. I looked and felt like the hired help they noticed. My mother greeted me with a distant air kiss. "Darling," she murmured, her gaze sweeping over my simple attire. "You look comfortable." She took the bottle of Merlot, passing it off to a servant without a glance at the label. "So, what's work like these days? We never hear any updates." "Quiet," I replied. And in all the ways that truly mattered, it was the absolute truth. From across the expansive living room, my Aunt Eliza piped up, "I heard you're taking a sabbatical. Dear, must be lovely to have all that free time." I took a slow sip of my water, observing them. They were using the ornate silver cutlery I had purchased for my mother's 50th birthday, back when my first startup was flourishing, and I foolishly believed that expensive gifts could somehow translate into genuine affection. Now, she proudly informed her guests that it was ancient Sharma family silverware from Europe. They spent a solid 20 minutes fawning over Lena, my younger sister, who now worked for some high-profile international charity. "She's making real change," someone declared loudly, ensuring I was within earshot. Then came the first subtle crack in their carefully constructed facade. Chloe, Leo's girlfriend, a sweet, somewhat oblivious young woman, leaned over from her seat. "Anya," she began, her eyes bright, "you'd know this. My company just started using a service called NexusLink. It's a total game changer. Whoever built it is honestly a genius. I even heard it was a woman." I felt a faint flicker behind my eyes, a tremor of triumph, but I kept my face perfectly neutral. Just a tiny, almost imperceptible smile, the kind that escapes when you think no one is watching. My mother cleared her throat, abruptly changing the subject. "You know," she began, her voice deceptively soft, "some people think they're on top of the world and then life has a way of humbling them right back to where they started." Her aim was anything but soft. I didn't speak, but I met her gaze, truly looked at her, and she, predictably, looked away. The ensuing silence wasn't empty, it was charged, thick with unspoken tensions. They believed they had won something, simply by enduring my presence. What they didn't know was that the next course wouldn't be lamb. It would be truth, and it was already simmering, almost ready to be served. The conversation around the table had seamlessly transitioned from thinly veiled insults to outright financial peacocking, investment portfolios, rapid real estate flips, audacious IPO predictions. Everyone was clamoring to prove they were at the pinnacle of success. Leo was in the midst of grandiosely boasting about some dubious crypto venture when my phone, almost as if on cue, began to ring again. I picked it up and with a deliberate, almost theatrical calm, I said, "Excuse me," before placing it on the table and putting it on speaker. "Hello, Anya." June's voice, crisp and clear, filled the room. "Just confirming tomorrow morning's meeting with Global Logistics Partners. The $80 million deal is officially locked in. Legal has sent over the updated contract draft for your final review." A beat of silence. "Also," June continued, "the tech team flagged a minor security patch for the NexusLink routing algorithm. They need your final sign-off before pushing it live." Silence. It was absolute, stunning. As if someone had flipped a switch, and all sound had been instantly vacuumed from the room. Chloe blinked at me, her mouth slightly agape. "Wait," she stammered. "Anya, you're the founder of NexusLink." I didn't answer immediately. I simply let my gaze drift around the table, taking in each face. Leo was frozen mid-sip, a droplet of wine clinging precariously to his lip. My mother's hand had tightened around her wine glass, her knuckles stark white. The uncle who had earlier mocked my long vacation was now meticulously studying the intricate floral arrangement in the centerpiece, as if it held the secrets of the universe. I finally turned back to Chloe. You said your company uses a system, didn't you? Does it work well? She nodded, still visibly stunned. Better than any of the bigger guys. It's brilliant. Leo managed a nervous, forced laugh. Well, look at that. He choked out, little cousin Anya holding out on us. My mother finally spoke, her voice thinner, more brittle than I remembered. Why wouldn't you tell the family? She asked, a faint tremor in her words. Something this big, we could have supported you. I tilted my head slowly, as if genuinely trying to recall a forgotten detail. When everything collapsed, my first company, I began, my voice even, devoid of any bitterness. No one asked if I was okay. You all just walked away. The words weren't filled with anger or resentment, they were simply factual. But they landed with the undeniable weight of a stone dropped into a perfectly still pond. I stood up, slowly brushing invisible lint from the sleeve of my blouse. I'm not saying this to gloat, I stated, my voice clear and steady. I just want to make something very clear. What you see is never all I am. And from this moment forward, I would appreciate it if my silence is no longer mistaken for failure. There were no replies, no fumbled excuses, just stunned, silent faces and the faint, nervous clink of someone carefully setting down a fork. I turned and walked out, my head held high. For the first time in nearly a decade, the suffocating weight wasn't on my shoulders, it was a heavy lump, I imagined, in their throats. Behind me, I felt a gaze linger, Leo's, not with judgment anymore, but with a new, unsettling calculation. A week after that unforgettable dinner, my inbox lit up with an invitation from Leo. Lunch, the subject line read, his tone in the email body was unusually courteous. The kind of performative respect I'd witnessed corporate executives employ when they wanted something, but hadn't yet formulated how to explicitly ask for it. We met at a new, ridiculously trendy downtown spot, where the appetizers alone cost more than my monthly rent used to. Leo arrived impeccably dressed in a navy blazer, radiating an almost palpable confidence. He ostentatiously pulled out my chair, as if auditioning for a charm school scholarship. I have to say, he began, a practiced smile on his face, you truly surprised me, Anya, in a good way, of course. You've built something quite remarkable with Nexus Link. Really? I responded, my voice carefully neutral. I waited. People like Leo always drape their self-serving offers in layers of compliments. It was only a matter of time before the true invoice, the real ask, would appear, I figured. He continued, leaning forward conspiratorially. You might need someone to help manage expansion on the East Coast. I've got solid contacts, banks, a few key press channels. I know the territory inside and out. You'd be unstoppable with the right partnerships, Anya. He slid a sleek folder across the table. Inside was a strategic collaboration draft. He was proposing a hefty 30% ownership of any Eastern division in exchange for PR, media access, and bank facilitation. I flipped through it once, not even bothering to read the fine print. Then I asked, my voice perfectly even, what do you know about dynamic route optimization using API layers across decentralized courier hubs? He blinked, caught off guard. Well, that's your wheelhouse, obviously. I'm more of a macro guy, right? He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a low, almost menacing whisper. Look, Anya, I'm just trying to help here. Let's not make this messy. The Sharma name still carries weight in this city. People might talk if they think you're pushing the family away. There it was, the sugar-coated threat, Leo's classic move, making manipulation sound like genuine concern. I picked up the folder, closed it, and gently slid it back towards him. I've lived long enough, Leo, I said, my gaze steady, to tell the difference between someone genuinely trying to help and someone simply trying to carve a piece out of a pie they didn't bake. His mouth twitched, his practiced half-smile faltering. And Leo, I added, standing up, next time you bring a proposal to the table, at least try to understand the menu. I left before dessert was even served. It was a Tuesday morning when June, my assistant, buzzed my intercom. Your mother's here, she announced. Says she doesn't have an appointment, but insists it's urgent. I looked up from my desk, already knowing this was far from a social visit. Send her in, June, I instructed. My mother swept into my office with a grace that had always bordered on performance art. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored cream coat adorned with a matching brooch, and that familiar air of moral superiority she wore like her most expensive perfume. She surveyed my office, sleek, quiet, efficient, with a restrained nod of approval, then offered a tight smile. I thought it was time I saw where you work, Anya, she said, settling into the visitor's chair and carefully placing a leather-bound folder on my desk. You've built something truly impressive, and I think it's time we built something together. She opened the folder with a flourish. Inside were documents outlining a proposal for a charitable foundation. The Sharma Legacy Initiative, a series of high-profile philanthropic ventures, food banks, scholarships, clean energy projects. All noble on the surface. But the crucial detail, the kicker, was this: the board would be comprised entirely of established family figures, and I would be listed as executive director, the public face, the operator. But decidedly asterisk, not asterisk, the owner. You've always been brilliant, Anya, she said, smoothing a corner of the page. But imagine what you could achieve with the family name behind you. The Sharma blood commands respect. I kept my expression neutral. I've never needed anyone to fear me, mother, I replied calmly. I've only ever needed them to trust that the package shows up on time. She blinked, visibly thrown for a fleeting half-second. I stood, gesturing towards the hallway. Let me show you something. We walked past the tech bullpen where maps, schedules, and live routing algorithms flickered across whiteboards and monitors. The air hummed with the energy of new ideas, of genuine movement, no marble. No oil paintings of stern, long-dead men in waistcoats, just work. These people, I said quietly, gesturing to my team, don't care about my last name. They care that their systems don't crash, that their customers get their bread delivered before noon. Back at my office door, she handed me a folded piece of paper. If you continue to distance yourself, she said softly, her voice laced with a subtle warning, I won't be able to protect you from what the family may start to say. She left, her spine ramrod straight, maintaining her perfect posture even. In retreat, later, I unfolded the letter. One line more than any other struck me like a knife to the ribs. Even if I don't agree with what they say about you, I may not be able to stop it. They weren't coming to understand me. They were preparing to attack. 3 days later, a certified envelope arrived bearing the embossed crest of Sharma and Associates, the family law firm once the proud jewel of our clan. It was now little more than a crumbling edifice, plagued by unpaid rent and a rapidly dwindling number of partners. Inside was a formal letter from Uncle Rowan. It was polite, even surprisingly affectionate, congratulating me on the success of Nexus Link. Then he got straight to the point. The firm was failing. A takeover was imminent, and if I didn't act swiftly, outsiders would claim what had been ours for generations. He proposed that I discreetly purchase the firm to preserve the honor of the Sharma name. He offered me no seat at the table, no recognition, no public ownership, just a check. He wanted me to pay to keep their dignity intact. If I agreed, I would be a silent benefactor, a hidden vault where they could deposit their shame and withdraw a fabricated legacy. I thought about it for precisely 5 seconds. Then I opened my laptop, drafted an email, and attached a photo. The image was of a gleaming plaque outside the newly built scholarship wing of Epsilon Law School. It read, "The Future Coders Fund in honor of persistence over pedigree." Below it was a list of 5 brilliant students from underrepresented backgrounds, who had just received full tuition scholarships. I typed, "Dear Uncle Rowan, I've already chosen where to invest my ethics, and it's certainly not in institutions that once erased me from their letterhead." I hit send. Within 24 hours. A screenshot of my reply had surfaced in the notorious family group chat. A cesspool of passive-aggressive emojis and carefully curated, self-congratulatory family updates. One cousin labeled me a traitor to her bloodline. Someone else accused me of biting the hand that raised me. I didn't reply. I simply updated Nexus Link's code deployment system, ensuring every package continued to arrive on time, seamlessly, efficiently. The next ominous ping came in during a strategy call. June's voice crackled through my headset, low but urgent. "Anya, I think you need to see this." She forwarded a link. A thread on a prominent tech forum had just surfaced, claiming to contain fragments of Nexus Link's core routing algorithm. The code was legitimate, partially obfuscated, but undeniably from an early version of our system. Within the hour, it had been reposted across half a dozen Reddit subforums, with amateur developers meticulously dissecting it line by line. The ripple effect was instantaneous. Investors began to ask pointed questions, internal chatter spilled into panicked emails. A few distribution partners quietly paused negotiations on new contracts. One minor publication even audaciously speculated that we had plagiarized our system from an older routing architecture, a laughable accusation. But in a digital storm, even a whisper can become thunder. And then, Chloe's name surfaced. She had been granted temporary backend access during a performance audit last quarter. It was routine, fully approved, meticulously logged. But people didn't care about process or protocol, they cared about proximity, and Chloe, bright and inherently optimistic, also happened to be Leo's ex-girlfriend. The connection was flimsy, tenuous, but the board didn't require irrefutable proof. They needed a scapegoat. A public gesture of accountability. In an emergency meeting, one of the advisors, a man who hadn't even known my name 6 months prior, offered his suggestion. With a sickeningly polished smile, perhaps for the sake of stability, he began, the CEO could step aside temporarily, just while we investigate. It was an ambush meticulously disguised as concern. I looked around the room. Half of them couldn't meet my eyes, the others tried, but with that hollow, evasive gaze that clearly stated, "This is for your own good," and just like 8 years ago, I was being asked to disappear for their comfort, their convenience. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't protest. I simply nodded. "I understand," I said quietly. Then I excused myself and walked directly to my office, where June was already waiting. Her face etched with worry. "Open the dev archive," I said quietly, handing her a secure flash drive. "Full trace logs, access records, traffic redirection. Find where it leaked from." She looked confused. "We're not going public with this?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not yet." Then I paused, my voice dropping even lower. "They're not used to someone who acts asterisk after asterisk. They've already been doubted. Let's show them what that looks like by Friday." Nexus Link was a veritable battlefield. Tech media had seized upon the story with voracious appetite. Headlines screamed about security breaches, flawed architecture, and rampant speculation about corporate sabotage. Clients flooded our support lines internally. Morale splintered, the whispers loud enough to drown out any facts. Chloe took a leave of absence, voluntary technically. But when half the board raises their eyebrows every time you walk into a room, absence becomes a matter of self-preservation. I said nothing to the press, no grand statements, no online rebuttals. But June and I never stopped watching, never stopped working. Late one night, hunched over a tray of lukewarm vending machine coffee and endless server logs, June found it. A username tied to an old internal Git repository, Phoenix87, belonging to a former engineer named Trevor Davies. He had been one of our very first engineers, brilliant, entitled, and ultimately fired for egregious breaches of courier privacy protocols. At the time, I had buried the details to protect the company's fledgling image, even giving him a clean exit and a positive recommendation. He had, it turned out, retained a beta build from his time on the development team. It wasn't theft in the traditional sense. It was pure, unadulterated spite disguised as a lucrative opportunity. I looked at the meticulously compiled report June had created and slowly closed my laptop. Then, I did the truly unexpected. I didn't press charges. Instead, I released 15% of Nexus Link's core routing engine code, open source, publicly available, with a simple, powerful statement on GitHub. Nexus Link was born from a desire to make logistics invisible and trustworthy. If trust requires transparency, then I choose transparency. Here is a piece of what we've built. Make it better. The tech world exploded. Developers, many from competing startups, swarmed the repository within hours. Comments poured in, bug fixes, performance tweaks, brilliant architectural suggestions. A former critic published a viral article titled "The CEO Who Blinked and Reset the Standard." It didn't fix everything overnight, but it irrevocably changed everything. By Monday, 3 investors who had hesitated on the brink of pulling out sent emails of unwavering support. One major client reinstated their multi-million-dollar contract. More importantly, our team, though rattled by the storm, felt seen, not merely defended, but truly *led*. That very night, Chloe walked into my office. Her eyes were glassy, red-rimmed. She held her phone, its screen still lit with the message I had sent her an hour earlier. "I believe in you." Because once, I desperately needed someone to believe in me, and no one did. She didn't say anything, just nodded, a silent acknowledgement, and stayed. The storm had passed, but it left behind a profound silence that buzzed louder than any noise. It was the kind of hush that fills a space after everything has been shaken, rearranged, and finally settled. And now, people walked slower, spoke softer within the Nexus Link offices, as if not to disturb the fragile, hard-won balance. The servers still blinked, orders still routed, and delivery trucks still moved with seamless efficiency. But something in the air felt heavier, more meaningful. Anya stood alone in the hallway leading to the engineering wing. For a long moment, she didn't enter, she simply listened. The quiet clicks of keyboards, the low hum of focused conversation, the unmistakable rhythm of something real, something vital being rebuilt from strain and adversity. She finally stepped inside. Chloe was wiping down a whiteboard, covered in rows of scribbles, complex flowcharts and half-erased ideas, layered over each other like stories yearning to be told. Her eyes, though tired, were calm, and her frame seemed smaller than usual beneath her oversized hoodie. Anya remained silent until Chloe finally noticed her. Chloe offered a small, hesitant smile. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft but resolute. What if we took a part of Nexus Link, the core tech, the routing engine, and created something parallel? A non-profit, no clients, just community. Call it Open Roots. Anya raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Run deliveries for rural nonprofits. Local libraries, community food banks. Chloe nodded enthusiastically. Give micro-businesses in forgotten towns a platform to operate like the big guys. No investor Roy. Anya, just actual, tangible return to the people. Anya didn't answer immediately. Chloe continued, her voice gaining conviction. I'll lead it. No salary, at least for 6 months. I know how it looks. But this isn't to repay you or prove myself. It's because I genuinely believe we can remind people that tech isn't solely for scale or speed, it can be for kindness, too. Anya felt something profound shift within her, not in Chloe, but in herself. The last time she had trusted someone so completely, so unconditionally, it had cost her everything. 8 years of being erased, judged, silenced. But now, as she looked at Chloe, she didn't see risk or betrayal. She saw someone standing at the very same precipice she once had, except this time she wasn't standing there alone. Do it, Anya said softly, her voice barely a whisper. No need for a pitch deck, no budget forecast, just do it and do it. Like it means something. The next morning, she didn't expect to wake up to a headline. Forbes exclusive, Nexus Link launches Open Roots, a tech CEO's bold move to pair profit with purpose. Attached was a powerful sub-headline, from being called a silent founder to shaping a louder future. Anya stared at the screen, blinking, a quiet sense of triumph unfurling within her. Later that day, an email arrived from Global Logistics. Partners, we'd like to shift from investment to partnership. It read, innovation with intention is something we'd very much like to be a part of. Anya didn't overtly smile, but she felt something far more powerful, a quiet, deep anchoring peace settling within her. The day itself was ordinary in every sense. Sunlight spilling across her office floor, a half-eaten granola bar on her desk, and a proposal on her screen for a young female founder launching a rideshare app in remote Alaska. Then her phone rang. It was her mother. The voice on the other end was softer than she remembered, hesitant, almost tentative. Anya, she said, almost testing the name on her tongue. Would you come for dinner sometime this week? The family wants to talk, really talk. There was no pretense this time, no rehearsed superiority, just a fragile, vulnerable sentence from a woman who had once wielded silence like a weapon. Anya didn't answer right away. She looked through the glass wall of her office into the main workspace, where the new Open Roots team was in full brainstorm mode. June was patiently helping to interns with budget logistics, while Chloe was enthusiastically reviewing UI designs specifically crafted for older adults. With limited tech skills, the room felt alive, earnest, vibrant, a different kind of family. She thought about how many times she had desperately longed for her mother's acknowledgement, for the simple feeling of being genuinely invited instead of merely tolerated or ignored. Now that the invitation had finally come, it no longer held the immense, crushing weight it once did. Later that evening, she returned the call. Her voice was calm, steady. I appreciate the invitation, Mother. I truly do. But I'm deeply immersed in a long-term initiative right now. If there's something genuinely important, perhaps you could write it in a letter. I'll read it. But I won't return to a table where I was once unheard just to relive the silence. There was no anger in her voice, just truth, shaped and refined by time and firmly established boundaries. A few days later, in a modest but crowded room at the back of a university business incubator, June presented the first draft of Bridge Builders, a platform designed to connect minority tech students in underfunded schools with veteran mentors. Anya didn't lead the meeting. She didn't speak first or last. She sat quietly at the far end of the table, taking notes, simply listening. There, in that quiet corner, she experienced a profound realization. I never needed applause, she thought, a quiet conviction settling within her. What I needed and what I can now give is a chance for someone else to not be written off, simply because they dared to be silent. Not every redemption required noise, grand gestures, or public spectacle. Some arrived in the quiet form of a steady, outstretched hand extended not for personal credit, but to ensure that no one else fell through the very cracks where she had once so painfully disappeared. A year had passed, and with it, the chaos and firestorms that once defined Anya's days had given way to something quieter, more deliberate, more intentional. Her inbox still buzzed with activity, her days were still long, but her mind felt immeasurably lighter, not because the world had changed around her, but because she, irrevocably, had. That morning, she stood outside the weathered stone arch of her old university, the very place where her journey had first so spectacularly derailed. The campus buzzed with vibrant life, students in hoodies rushing to lectures, Coffee carts wafting fragrant steam into the crisp autumn air, the atmosphere alive with casual brilliance. Anya hadn't set foot here in nearly 9 years, not since her first startup had crashed and burned. And the school's administration, without appeal or even a conversation, had summarily revoked her scholarship and suspended her. Back then, she had left with a single cardboard box and a digital void where her grand dreams used to reside. Now she was back. But not as an alumna, not even by name. Simply as an unnamed guest of honor for a significant scholarship fund, established by an anonymous donor, a program called First Flight, specifically designed for student entrepreneurs, from low-income backgrounds, the very kind of student she had once been. When her name was announced, it wasn't her full name, but rather a former student who walked a longer path. She stepped onto the stage in the very same auditorium, where she had once sat in the very back row, desperately trying to disappear. She faced the audience. Rows upon rows of young, eager faces looked up at her with a kind of incandescent hope she had once forgotten how to carry. For a moment, she couldn't speak, then she remembered that day, years ago. The cold, unforgiving metal of the dorm hallway, chair beneath her legs, the searing glow of the suspension email burning through her retinas. Her entire future evaporating one cruel sentence at a time. She hadn't cried then. She hadn't even allowed herself to get angry, just empty. Like a name cleanly erased from a page without even the courtesy of lingering ink. Now, she took a deep, steadying breath and leaned toward the microphone. "I'm not here to reclaim a dream," she began, her voice resonating with quiet strength. "When a dream is taken from you, sometimes you don't fight to get it back. You build something else. A place, a door, a new table where the next dream can sit and flourish." She stepped down without waiting for applause. Outside, as she walked through the bustling quad, a student jogged up beside her, a second-year girl with thick-rimmed glasses and paint-stained jeans. "Excuse me," she said, breathless, "were you the one who made First Flight happen?" Anya didn't pause. She just smiled gently. "No," she said. "That was someone who once got told she didn't belong. She just decided not to let silence be the last word." The invitation arrived in a plain, unassuming envelope, no letterhead, no grand logo, just a simple message. "We'd be honored if you'd speak at our senior assembly. You were one of our brightest." It was signed by the principal of her old high school in Philadelphia. She stared at it for days before finally agreeing. Now, a week later, she pulled up to the curb of a neighborhood that had once been home. The familiar buildings hadn't changed much, though everything looked smaller somehow now. She parked a block away from the old watch shop her father used to run, long closed, long forgotten. The worn awning was gone, replaced by the garish signage of a vape store. But she still remembered the distinct smell of machine oil, the comforting, rhythmic ticking of old clocks waiting patiently for his steady, skilled hands. Anya stepped out and stood on the sidewalk, allowing the cacophony of city noise to fill the space where old, painful memories used to shout. There was no sadness now, only a profound sense of peace. She walked into the school, her coat folded neatly over her arm. The auditorium hadn't changed. The same creaky seats, the same perpetually flickering exit sign above the double doors. She stood backstage and remembered the day she received a certificate for academic excellence. Right here, the thunder's applause, and then, mere weeks later, the crushing silence, the phone calls that abruptly stopped, the internal file that was quietly updated, summarily removing her from any alumni mentions. When it was her turn, she walked to the podium, looking not at the staff, but at the sea of eager, young faces below. "I'm not here to talk about what I built," she began, her voice calm and clear. "That's not the part of the story that truly matters." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the students. "What matters is that when I was your age, I genuinely believed the worst thing in the world was to disappoint people, to be seen as someone who let others down." She paused again. "But I did fail, spectacularly. I lost my funding, I was dismissed from school. My own family stopped answering my calls. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with a broken heater, and we wrote code every single night for 3 years until I could finally try again." Then her voice softened, imbued with a quiet wisdom. "Success isn't a standing ovation. It's not the moment others applaud you. It's the moment you finally stop needing them to." Afterward, the students trickled out slowly, some waved, some nodded. Then a boy, perhaps 16, walked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Anya," he murmured, his eyes filled with a familiar ache. "Did you ever feel like no one needed you? Even when you tried so hard?" Her chest tightened with recognition. She bent down, looked him directly in the eye, and gently rested a hand on his shoulder. "Yes," she said, "but you just asked me that question. And that means you've already started needing ****, and that, young man, is where everything truly changes." She watched him walk away, his shoulders still slightly hunched, but now a little straighter than before. That night, Anya sat on the train heading home, the city lights flickering past the window like a living mosaic. She didn't feel like a mere guest or an outcast anymore. She felt like someone who had walked through the roaring fire of adversity and emerged, not looking to be welcomed back into old spaces, but to welcome others forward into new ones. And that, she thought, was all the homecoming she would ever truly need. 1 year later, Bridge Builders had blossomed into something no one had quite predicted. Not just a program, not just a platform, but a quiet, powerful revolution. It was now a national initiative, chosen as a primary bridge connecting underrepresented students with startup mentors across the country, women returning to the workforce, rural youth, first-generation immigrants, all now had something they hadn't possessed before: access. The official launch ceremony was being held at Capitol Hill. Senators, prominent journalists, eloquent speeches, thunderous applause, and yet, one name was conspicuously absent from the guest list. Anya wasn't there. She was in Nevada, kneeling on dusty earth beneath a tent flap that flapped rhythmically in the warm summer breeze. The vast desert sky stretched open above a remote camp tucked into a forgotten corner of a state map. The kind of place no one bothered to build grand legacies in. Unless, of course, you were building people. 50 kids, most of them first-time coders, most of them from neighborhoods that didn't boast tech meetups or robotics clubs, or even stable Wi-Fi. But today, they had something immeasurably better. Someone who believed they deserved to write their own language into the world, to define their own futures. Anya sat cross-legged beside Chloe and June, huddled in a circle of students staring, wide-eyed at their screens, a mixture of trepidation and excitement on their young faces. "We're going to write our very first line of code today," Chloe announced, her smile radiant. "Just 2 words. Hello, future." Nervous laughter rippled through the group, accompanied by excited shuffles. Anya gently guided one small hand to a keyboard, helping a girl with a bouncy curly ponytail and a shy demeanor type each letter. One deliberate key at a time. "Like this?" the girl asked, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and doubt. "Exactly. Like that," Anya said, her voice soft but firm. "The future always starts slow, one step at a time." As the sun began to lower, painting the vast desert sky in hues of molten gold and fiery orange, the initial laughter gradually transformed into deep, focused concentration. Little faces were illuminated by the soft blue glow of their screens, small fingers tapping diligently, navigating syntax errors and celebrating tiny triumphs. Somewhere in the background, a dusty, portable speaker played soft Latin pop, a vibrant, incongruous soundtrack to this quiet revolution. Later, while gathering wires and notebooks, a young girl, perhaps 10, maybe even younger, walked over and gently tugged at Anya's shirt. Her name tag read Elena. She looked up, her eyes serious, and asked, "Miss, who are you if nobody knows her name?" Anya blinked, genuinely caught off guard by the profound simplicity of the question. She let out a soft, genuine laugh and lowered herself until they were perfectly face to face. "I'm someone who used to be told she was nobody," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "So now, I help people like you figure out who you are, before anyone else tries to tell you otherwise." Elena nodded slowly, as if carefully filing the answer away somewhere deep and safe within her. When the session ended, the kids scattered, running through the field, chasing each other with string-powered paper drones built from code blocks and cardboard. Anya stood in the center of the joyful noise, watching them, the wind in her hair, a profound silence in her soul. She had never felt smaller, or more infinitely connected to something truly vast. Back in New York, across time zones and atmospheres, the Bridge Builders headquarters hummed with quiet, efficient energy. On the admin dashboard, a new update pinged. "Welcome, new mentor, Anya Sharma. Role: observer. No grand title, no detailed job description. Just a quiet, powerful presence." She was no longer the CEO, no longer the failed daughter, no longer the misunderstood genius desperately clawing her way back. She was a witness, a guide, someone who had stepped aside so the next generation could step forward unburdened by the past. And somewhere between the joyful laughter of children and the echo of forgotten names, Anya finally understood. Home wasn't a physical place or a predefined family or a legacy etched into cold granite. It was a profound question answered not with thunderous applause, but with quiet, deliberate footsteps, leading others beyond where you had stopped. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness, it's choosing peace over noise, profound truth over fleeting applause. The hardest battles are often the ones no one ever sees, fought in the quiet solitude of the soul. And the strongest people are often the quietest in the room, their power residing in their unwavering inner resolve. But in the end, dignity always speaks louder than revenge. Thank you for listening to my story. If this narrative resonated with you, please leave a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to follow the channel for more stories that speak directly to the soul.